Hi guys, Dwayne Caldwell from the Northwest Oklahoma Wood Turners, and we're going to do a short video today on inside out turning. We're going to do, I've got several show and tell pieces here, but basically we're going to do a two-piece today, kind of like this little Valentine's gift I made my wife here a few years ago. It has a heart-shaped finial on it, and that's basically what we're going to do today. That particular one is small and it's made out of ebony and very dainty. The piece it's on is called Random Hearts, and it's a bowl that I turned very, very thin and pierced it and caught several little heart shapes in it. So that's a two-piece finial. This is also a finial, and I did a video several years ago on how to do that heart-shaped candlestick. This particular one has a walnut top and bottom with a maple center in it. So again, it's two pieces inside out. There are several ways you can do this. This is a three-piece inside out turning. And if you zoom in on the top and the bottom, you kind of see the three pieces of wood that it's cut on 120-degree angles. And then we put it together and we turn what's on the inside first. We bust it apart, turn everything 180 degrees, re-glue it back together, and then turn the outside. Is the basic process in it. This is a small Christmas ornament that Jerry made, and it's a very pretty one. It's a three-piece, and he did it the same way. It's 120-degree angles, and we may discuss how to do those later if time permits. The cobra snakes back here, this is a piece that it's got a piece of pink ivory for the pot, and then it's colored maple for the bottom. These cobra snakes are turned inside out, and they're two pieces, but they were turned, and then I busted them apart, turned them around, turned the inside and then the outside, and then I put them back between centers, and I created the round portion on the bottom. So that's kind of fun. Today's project is going to be a wine glass. And this particular wine glass will be a wedding gift for Aaron, who is the manager down at the woodcraft store in Oklahoma City. I promised him I'd try to do him a piece, so we're going to do this stem today. I haven't got the glass done into it, but on the glasses you can have a wine glass of your choice, and you can cut the stem off about 1 inch or so long and do away with the base and then use the top. All right? You can also buy these glass pre-cut like this one is from Craft Supply. They have a couple or three different varieties of what they can do. So I think without any, well, I've got one other thing I wanted to show you, which is a big table lamp, and it has a three-piece inside-out turning for the post in here. This is the table that I made to set my lamp on in my bedroom. But this is an old piece of cast iron lamp that's probably 100 years old right now. There's a lamp that Bob Jarrett's mother had, so it's quite old. But this is a three-piece of maple with 3 diamonds, and I thought that was pretty cool. So anyway, we will get started. So as you can see, this three-piece inside-out turning, you have quite a wide place. You could turn a Christmas ornament like this and then put a little statue of maybe a Christmas tree or something on the inside if you wanted to. I see a lot of people do little angels and things like that. This is a 4-piece inside-out, and you can see that you lose a lot of space on between those cutting. So this one here has just got like a 1/4 inch strip. It's a 4-piece put together. You would think that you could cut a piece of 90-degree pieces and put them together, but the more pieces you have when you try to put it together, the more chances of a mistake you have, and the little bitty small mistake will multiply times however many pieces you have. So with that aside, start out our project. We'll need to mill a piece of wood so that it's the same thickness throughout, and this winds up being exactly 1 inch thick. Then I have cut a couple of pieces off of a piece like that are now, they're 1 inch square and 5 inches long. The directions that you will print out has got a little bit thinner pieces of wood in it. The heart is going to be slightly smaller, but our project requires to have a larger piece. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to lay our pieces down. We're going to roll it until we can kind of match the grain where it looks decent. And that doesn't look real well. That's better. That's about right. So we're using a long, straight grain wood here, and that's kind of important. You don't want something with a lot of grain figure in it when you go to doing these inside-out turnings, because the figure will show your glue line real easily. So the first thing to do is to place it so that your all your glue line is down the center and the grain is long and straight. And then mark it so that you will know how it goes back together. And I'll just put 2 little angle lines on mine so that when I turn everything around and I come back and I can put those together, I'll know I'm back in the same spot. So by doing that, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn everything 180 degrees. So I'll rotate this one 180 and this one 180. And I should wind up with my marks opposite each other on the bottom side of the table. Lay it down, and then we're going to separate it one more time like this. All right, that's 90 degrees. Then we'll take a dab of, I use the medium or the thick CA glue here because it's kind of a gap in it, and we want to fill that gap. So I'm going to put some CA glue on both ends of that piece. Just a daub about the size of a dime or so. And then we'll take our accelerator and put the accelerator on the other piece, roll them back together and stick them together. And just hold it for just a few seconds, and that CA glue will set up pretty quickly. And you can see now that my marks are opposite. My grain is not lined up any longer. Got a little glue on my table, I'll just dry it up right real quick. So the next step is to identify where the, need a paper towel. Can you give me a paper towel, Tom? So the next step will be to put the heart design on it. So I have a piece of corian here, a little thin piece of corian that I have cut the heart shape out of that I will use for my heart in the center of this project. So I'm going to identify the top and the bottom of my wood. So I think this is going to be the bottom. I will put this on here like this, line that up with the bottom, and then I can take my pen here and I will trace that shape onto the wood. I need to pause just a second. So I have put the heart, drawn it on here. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to color this heart in here with a dark magic marker so that I can definitely see the heart shape when I put it on the lathe. And that you got to keep in mind now, this heart shape is going to be on the top of your lathe, and it's going to be rolling around like this, and you'll be able to see that heart that I drawed on there during the turning process. Now there's another step that I'm going to do here that I need to know so that I can get my project even and just exactly like the other one. Let's pause just a second. So this is our project, and during since this is going to be a set of wine glasses for a wedding, we want them as nearly the same shape as possible. So I'm going to take and I'm going to a little small square, and I'm going to line this inside edge up with that point, and then I'm going to draw a line across it so that I know that I've got, if my measurements are correct now, I should have about 5/8 of an inch down here that will become the dowel that I'll stick down in the base later. And then that's really all I need to do right now, is to have that on there. So we will take and in your directions I have told you to use some boxing tape, and this boxing tape is the one that has nylon stranding in it. Kind of tough to get started, but I've told you now that will be at the top and it will roll around towards you on the lathe. So as it's going to roll this way, I need to position my tape so that it tightens as the project rolls around on the lathe. If you turn your tape in the wrong direction, it's going to want to loosen and let go. So I'm going to put at least 2 good wraps of this boxing tape with the nylon strands in it. It's mighty strong stuff. It will hold up a man easily if you tape it on there. But I'll put at least 2 wraps on each end of this and cut it off. So now then, that's rolling this way, so I need to do this one the same way so that it tightens as it rotates on the lathe. This is really a safety deal. I have seen on YouTube videos and stuff, some people say, oh, I just use masking tape or something like that. Well, it's kind of like that proverbial fence. You can jump it 90, 100 times and then eventually you're going to trip your toe. So if you just use a weaker tape, sometimes that's going to let go. So now then I have got my project fixed. I've identified the bottom and the top. And if I need to, I could make a little mark on it. The next step would be to take my little ruler and at the points where the heart comes on the edge of that wood right there, we're going to draw a small line. Get a pencil here. So this line will become very important, and I'll show you why here in just a second, but it will help us keep from breaking that heart off. So I'm going to take this line all the way across and all the way around. Oops. Get it up here, sometimes I use my belly for a third hand. So the lines should be coming together right there on that point, which it did. And this one should come back together here on the points. Now I can take my pocket knife and I'm going to make a small cut on those corners of that heart, because when I start turning it, it's going to want to chip and break and kind of be ugly when we get through. So if I cut this line right here, that should aid me in turning it without it ripping and tearing apart so much. I don't think I can possibly turn it without it doing some, but we're going to try to do as good a job as we can. That way we won't have so much sanding and cleaning up after we get the project built. So by cutting all 4 of those corners, Now then I can do that. So next thing is I'm going to identify the center of where I just glued it up. And since that's a 1 inch piece, halfway should be a 1/2 inch, right? So we get it on here and mark on the glue line, and then I will have a 1/2 inch either side of the glue line. Now I'm going to take a small set punch and just put a little bitty set point, center line. Then we're going to pause just a second and we'll get started on the next step. So we're back over here at my grandfather's drill press, which is soon to be 100 years old. It's like made in 1926. But we're going to just drill a little small 1/8 inch hole, about 1/8 of an inch deep on each end. If you fail to do this step, when you go to putting it between centers on the lathe, it will want to split and separate. So it's kind of important to give the points on your lathe centers a place to be. So we're back over here to the lathe now, and I wanted to show you my safety drive. This is a one-way brand safety drive, and it has no spur drive teeth on it. If you use a spur drive on this project, you increase your chance of it tearing up about 3 times, okay? And the nice thing about this one is it's the exact same shape as the one down here on this end. So I could take my project off and turn it over if I wanted to and get back on the same center. So we're going to put that in here. Bring the tailstock up. And I'm going to position it now so that this heart that I drawed on here is going to be visible to me on the top. And to you, you'll probably see it from that angle right there. All right. So we'll come up here and lock it in, bring it up and set it inside those 2 little divots that we cut at the drill press there a while ago, and just kind of clamp it a little bit. Just want it tight enough that it's not going to blow off of there. And then I'm going to proceed to turn the heart. So first things first. First step will be to take in your handout you'll see that I have took a parting tool and parted from this point here down to about the end of that blue. And that's what I'm going to do right now with a small parting tool. And this is just a little 1/8 inch parting tool. You don't want to use a big one because your chances of tearing up stuff will get greater. Since this is an inside out turning, I'm going to turn it up fairly fast with the speed on the lathe. And somewhere around 2,000 to 2,400 would be a good RPM, and that's pretty much where I'm at. So that line that I drawed on there, I'm going to start in on that line, and I'm going to angle this parting tool back toward the top of that part, just ever so slightly. But first thing, I'm very gently go right straight in. Then I'm going to make myself a little room. Now I'm going to do the angle that we talked about. And I'm going to go in until I get down to that part. Let's pause it just a second. So I'm going to stop the lathe, and we're going to look at that parting cut I just made. It should go down and just be right at the line where my heart ends, all right? Next step we're going to do is we're going to take a small bowl gouge. Now see, one thing, if I had not have made those cuts right here, see all that tear out, it could have been trying to tear out the corners. So that's the voice of experience. I've probably made a couple of dozen sets of these so far. So we're going to take a small 3/8 bowl gouge here, and we're going to proceed to hollow out that heart. Can you see the ghost that I was talking about? See that heart? You can still see the heart shape, right? So I'm going to proceed to cut this with a 3/8 bowl gouge. But I'm just going to set in here. I need to get my tool rest a little bit closer. I'm a little far away from my work. Maybe just a tad bit higher. So I'm going to proceed to hollow this out, and you can see that I'm going to be doing a sway, all right? So that sway, and I'll keep my hand up next to my little anchor right here, and then that way I'm not all elbows whenever I go cutting, because if you're out of control, it's usually because you're out here like this, all right, that you stand a big chance of getting a catch like that. So here we're going to come back in here and just barely take these off. And can you see where I'm cutting it now? As my friend who's no longer with us, Bob Jarrett, told me, he says each cut that you make is a practice cut for the one following up. So I'm going to stop right here and we're going to look at this. So you can see that I still like a little bit of blue right in here getting this all cut out. I'm going to start it back up and we'll finish turning that away. That should have just about cleaned it up. Yep, so you can see that I'm right on my black line. All you can see now is the black line that I drew on there originally. So now it's time to clean out the top part of that. And there's two different tools that you can use. A more professional kind of a deal is this Mike Hunter tool. It's called a swan neck, and I can position that and we can cut it out here. I could use a cheap homemade tool, which is nothing in the world but a spade bit that I have kind of ground away, and I use this a lot whenever I'm hollowing out little projects like the under the little tops and stuff. So I could do this one, but I think I'm going to use a more expensive one since I bought it. And here I'm going to turn this around. This way now, that's the nice thing about having two ends. It's exactly the same on here. I can get right back in the same center and come back on there. And the reason I had to turn it around is because that swan neck is designed to work over here, all right? Not that way. So it's a one directional tool. And it has to be, the tool rest has to be far enough back that it's not going to do that. All right, so you have to have it far enough back that you can operate it. I'm going to start it out, and I'm going to have the point of this down a little bit, and then I'm going to bring it up and into the wood, and then just some very minor cuts to clean that out. We'll look at that, see how we're doing. Pretty much all my blue's gone. All right, we just got just a little bit right out there on that tip. I might try to get just right there, just a little bit better. So these lathes they've got a 7-second ramp down on them. And the reason they've got that ramp down is so that you won't throw off a piece of wood when you turn it off. If you grab the hand back here and you try to use it as a brake, you can mess your project up, all right? So I know we get impatient, but it's best just to let the lathe slow down on its own. So now then, we've pretty much got this all done. We'll pause it and we'll move back over to the table and we'll do a little bit more work on it. So this is the point that we will want to do any sanding if we're going to. I'm going to take and sand these little tear outs that we were talking about. Just get the fuzz off of it a little bit. And you can actually sand the inside of it with it running. So I've got a 150 grit Arbornet sandpaper here, and it should be real flexible and I'll be able to sand it. Normal sanding is that we would go slow, but this is inside out, so we're not going to do that. We're just going to kind of touch it up a little bit right here. Hold it over and hold it where it's down so that it doesn't rip it out of your hands, and we can actually sand on the inside of that part just a little bit. You don't get too many chances to sand the inside anymore, so I would spend a little bit of time, and I'm not going to bore you sanding, but going with the grain and getting rid of any tool marks you might have had will be kind of important. So we'll take it back off, and we'll go ahead and pause it this time. We'll go back over. So we're going to bust our project apart and do any sanding we might need to do. Find the end of that tape, or you can just simply cut it and make a new end. Sometimes, if you're like me, your fingernails get broke off. Before you know it, you don't have a thumbnail big enough to do the job anymore. This works pretty easy. So you would need to set a wood chisel or a putty knife or just a regular knife in here and get on the glue line. It shouldn't take much to bust that loose. Make our pieces back. Then it's kind of important to clean it up. There'll be some fuzz and stuff along in this part here. We're going to run that on the sanding stick to get it nice and flat and level. And then do the other one the same way. And this is pretty much your last best chance to do any sanding that you need to do up inside this heart. And then you're going to want to lay it down and make sure that the original lines that we put on there come back together. And that way we know where our end should be about right, and that will be your heart. So we're going to put a little glue on it, a little fuzz on it from my tape. Need to get cleaned off. So you can overdo glue pretty easily, and you can also underdo the gluing pretty easy.
And then, so, Dwayne, for this step, you're using just regular glue.
Tight bond glue, yes. This is just plain tight bond glue. And I'm kind of putting a thin coat on both surfaces. Then we're going to do a little rub. We're going to kind of rub them a little bit. Separate them. And if we've got any dry spots, it's time to address those dry spots. Looks pretty good. Then we're going to get it back together like it belongs, and we will take our clamps and we'll clamp them. So these clamps are wonderful clamps, and I've got lots of them, but they have a tendency when you're gluing two projects like this with one single clamp, they have a tendency to let their pieces kind of slip and slide. So you have to make sure you put a slight amount of tension on it and then kind of sneak up on it, and then you can tighten it up. Level it out and see right there, possibly, that it slipped on me, so I'm gonna have to reposition it a little bit. Now, we're going to sit here and watch this dry for about 18 hours. Because it says that the type bond says 30 minutes minimum clamp time. And then if you got something that's going to be stressing it, you need to give it 24 hours to let it dry. So this will definitely have some stress on it. So we have to just sit here and watch the camera run for 24 hours. Magically, time has passed. And it's 24 hours the next day. But anyway, we're going to sand the surfaces of our project nice and clean. If you had any tear out, and it's possible to run it across a joiner or through a sander and clean it up and get your sides as close to near perfect as you can on both ends. Then we're going to redraw our line on the bottom, which I told you would be our tenon on the bottom is going to be about 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to redraw it since it went away in the sanding process. Stick it on here, and one line's really all I need there. Darken it so you'll be able to see it. And I have already taken this project over, and at the top I have marked my center line on the glue line, and then I've drilled a small 1/8 inch hole, 1/8 of an inch deep, and I've done that on both ends. So you can see the original hole that I drilled was out here toward the edge, because we've turned it around now. Thus we call that inside out turning. So we're going to pause here, we're going to take it to the lathe, and we're going to proceed to turn this. So we're back at the lathe, and I've got it clamped back between the centers, and I have got my top of my project toward the drive end of the lathe, and the live center is down at the bottom. When you first start turning, you should always make a habit of going from the live center back to the headstock. So this we're going to be pretty thin to start out with, and if I start out with it up here, then if I go to put pressure down on this end, it's going to stand a better chance of destroying the project, tearing it up. So make a practice of starting at the live center and working back. All right. So now then we're going to take a roughing gouge, and we're going to turn this project. So again, we're going to run it back up to about 2,000 RPMs, and I'm just going to kind of do the anchor bevel cut thing. And I'm not going to in your handout, I have told you that we're going to turn this round where the heart, the wall on the heart is almost to its final thickness. And so we're real thick right now, so I'm going to turn this round until I just touch that edge of the heart. See your ghost. You can see your ghost on that part, and I think I'm getting pretty close, so I'm going to stop and look at it. Still like about 1/8 of an inch getting to the edge of it. That should be just about touching. Yeah, you can see that I'm just touching it. Maybe a couple of places is not quite touched, and some of them have, because I may not be exactly on the center line I started out with. So now then we're going to use a bowl gouge, and I'm going to trim it down here until this flat goes away and it becomes round. Again, we've turned it round until it just got real thin back here on the edges. Now we're going to proceed to turn it with a bowl gouge. We're going to follow the shape of this heart down until this area right here gets totally round, or almost round anyway. Set my tool rest up a little bit closer, and then we're going to start to turn it. So I'm just going to come down here and kind of take this off a little bit at a time. As you can see, I don't have much of a black mark left right there, so I'm getting pretty close to being done. All right, so I'm going to leave all this the way it is, and we're going to turn a little 3/8 inch tendon 5/8 inches long right here on the end. I'll use my little parting tool to get started with. So I happen to know that the end of this lathe center is exactly a 1/2 inch. So if I go down to that, I'll keep getting close to my 3/8. This is going to set in the base, and it needs to be concave ever so slightly right here. So I'm going to go to the trouble of concaving that area. And we're going to pause the camera just a second. So the first thing we're going to do is we've got a block of wood out of the same exact thickness and the same piece of wood that the basic part of the lamp was out of, which is soft maple in this case. The reason I've chose soft maple is because when I go to dyeing it, it will take a dye or a stain better than hard maple will. And I choose maple also because it lets the colors be truer. All right. So what we're going to do is we've got a block of wood that's about 3 1/4 inches, and then I've mitered the corners off on it. Then I've taken and I've drawn my lines to find an exact center, and each of these lines will allow me to line up a hole on my faceplate on those lines, and I can get my faceplate really centered up. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put double sticky tape on the faceplate, and it will be all that holds the base on. So start out in the middle. We'll put a piece, and I don't care if it runs off the edges or not. It does need to be pretty much toward the ends. Nothing perfect about it because it's just going to be discarded pretty quick. I'm using this X-Fasten tape, which is a very good brand if you're using double-sided tape very much. And some of us use this quite often in our segmented wood turning. But it has got a cloth center in it, which will let it pull off and clean up much easier. And it doesn't leave a bunch of residue on the piece that you're using or to hold it onto the faceplate with. Get a little seat there. Now then we can pull the paper off. I found that it is a little easier to make a small slice up in the inside of it, get my knife blade under that small slice, and it will come off a little bit easier.
And Dwayne, for people who have not used that before, it's not sticky on two sides until you peel this
Right,
this other
yes.
backing off.
Yeah, you got to pull the outside back in.
And as he pointed out, that's sometimes challenging to get that backing off of there.
So we can pause it while I'm finishing this project up. And then, so I have gone to the drill press, and I've drilled a very small 1/8 inch drill bit hole and about an 1/8 inch deep on both sides of my project. So by going all corners here, I should be really close to the center of that. And that's kind of important, because when I go to turning here in a few minutes, you'll see I center up on this, and then I will take it, pull it off the tape and put it back and center it up again. So we need to pause, and then we'll go to the lathe. So we're back over here at the lathe, and I'm going to knock out my safety drive. And the only faceplate I had was a 1x8 threads, and my lathe is a 1 1/4 x 8. So I'm going to put this adapter on there, and this will allow me to use those smaller faceplates with it. So now then, we can put the little faceplate that had the tape on it on here. Take my piece that I'm going to use for the base, and I'm going to bring this tailstock up a little bit closer here. Lock it in. Then I'm going to carefully push it down in here and put that point up in the divot. That should get me fairly centered. And then I can go coming up on this real slow and easy until it centers up. Put a little pressure on it, and it needs to sit there with the tailstock up for just a minute. We'll bump it around, and then I'm going to proceed to turn it around. Zoom in. So I will have to use a bowl gouge to turn this. I can't use my roughing gouge anymore, because some of this has got end grain. And if you got end grain, face grain, end grain, face grain, and you're using a roughing gouge, you can get some tear out. So it's best to use a bowl gouge, and that almost ensures you that you'll have very little, if any, tear out. So position the tool rest about a 1/2 inch away. And if you're a little unsure about your turning technique, you can take the bevel here and lay it flat on the wood and let it bump. You hear it? Then you can come off of that, line that bevel up, come off your wood, sneak in about 1/8 of an inch or so, and start taking it out. I'm not coming all the way off the end on purpose, because if I force that on off, I could get some breakage and tear out as I exit the wood with my bowl gouge. So what I'll do is I'll turn that down to where it's about the size I want it. Then we'll turn back around and turn it left-handed, and we'll take that off. I think that pretty well got it. There's still one flat spot in there. So this will be the very bottom of the project. So now I'm going to measure it and see how close I am to the project. Let's pause it just a second. So this is my prototype that I did, and I want this piece to be about the same as close as I can to that one. And that's 3 1/8 of an inch. And this is hopefully just a little bit more than 3 1/8, and I'm 3 3/16, so I'm a 16th bigger than what I want to be. I will go ahead now and turn what is going to become the bottom of this, and again I'm using a bowl gouge, all right? Turn my tool rest so that it's parallel with the wood that I'm cutting. And I'm going to start in, and I'm going to cut in here maybe close to a 1/2 inch in, all right? And I'll ride the bevel, then I'm going to bring it, swing my arm around, pick up my cut, and then I will go concaving that just slightly. That very center point right there, if we push pressure on it, it's going to break out and cause a tear out in the wood, and it's going to be ugly from now on, and you're going to work too much trying to get it struck. So let your tool do the work, go slow and easy with it, and it's still got that little 1/8 inch divot. I'm going to have to turn it down till that is gone. Voila, like so. Now then, I'm going to decorate up the bottom any way you feel that you would like to do that. I always kind of like to see the bottom of the project look nice, because it never fails that someone's going to pick it up and look at the bottom. So it ought to be nice looking too. So I've got a little spear point tool here. I'm going to come in here, and the first thing I'm going to do is put a couple of rings in there. Maybe just one to start out with. I'm going to slow the RPM down reasonably slow to about 400 RPM. If you've got a digital readout, you can see it and get exactly right, somewhere less than 600 RPM. We're going to use the little Robert Sorby tool, and this is the one that's got the little gear teeth on it. And whenever I put it up there, it has to set on the top of the tool rest on this flat. And then I can push it up, but I don't want it too far away or I'll lose my stableness of it. So I'm going to put it up here, and I'm going to get it to where I want it, and then I'm just going to slowly push it right straight in. I might be a little bit fast. I'm just going to bury the teeth here without moving anything. I've got a really good anchor on the tool. So I've got the teeth buried. Now I'll go in just slightly toward the middle and maybe slightly out. And that should have created a really nice little spiral out there on the end of this, which you can see. I'll sand it lightly, kind of clean things up here just a little bit. Then I'm going to take my spear point tool again, and we're going to put rings on both sides of that spiral. So on the inside, I'll put a little ring like right here, and then on the outside, you can hardly see it, right there. So that kind of makes a nice looking bottom. It's kind of hard to see because it's all white wood. But we're going to drop the tool rest, take a sanding stick, and we're going to sand this flat and square out here where it sets on the table. I'm just pushing in the middle and a little bitty short, maybe ½ inch strokes there. All right? And if this is fishtailing a little bit, we know we're not flat. So it has to set dead still in the center. All right? Then we know we're nice and flat. Take my 180 grit or 150 grit sandpaper, clean those up a little bit. Then I'm going to take some Corian countertop material, and we're going to burn in these lines. This is like using a wire burner if you was on a long spindle. If this will darken it up, it'll give it a little bit more accent and detail. And since it kind of burns, Sometimes that burn gets out where you don't want it. We'll touch it one more time with a little bit of sandpaper. Looks like I need to burn just a little bit more in the center. The wood is turning at such a slow RPM, sometimes that center you have to speed it up to get it to burn. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit here. There, that looks better. Now, the next step is to turn a small bead, if you will, on the outside edge of it. So we're going to turn it here, and we're going to get our detail gouge, and we're going to turn a little small bead right out here on the edge. This is where that extra 1/16 of an inch diameter comes in, because we're fixing to take that off, all right, with turning right here. And with a detail gouge and any, I like to be up on the top half whenever I'm turning beads on something. If I'm at the center line, it doesn't work. But you can see my tool is going to reach way up here above center, all right? Which will allow me to ride the bevel, anchor, bevel. And I'm putting that bevel right in where I want the halfway point of that base to be. And right here, speed it up. And then to turn a bead, it's kind of a twisting and raising your hand motion all at one time. What I did, so you can see it, is I had this right here. It's like the inside of a horseshoe. So if I twist it and raise it, that creates the bead. You can see what the tool's doing out here on the end. So I'm raising my hand on and twisting two motions at one time to get that half bead. Now then we're going to do the other half. So this time I'll be up here and I'll be raising and twisting away from my body this time to do the other half of the bead. Again, ride the bevel right on the high spot. Pick up my cut. And raise my hand on and twist at the same time. And I got the other half of the bead. Alright? So that's pretty much where we're shooting for. I'm going to stop the camera just a second. We're going to reverse this. So I have removed the project. And I've replaced the tape with fresh new tape. Old tape, maybe, probably not, going to stick good. And I can now turn the part that I've turned, I'm going to put it back toward the tape. And that other little divot that I made there with my 1/8 inch drill bit a while ago, I can recenter this side up. And when I come up there and put pressure on it, it should be reasonably close to the same center. Not saying it's going to be perfect, because I know it won't. Done too many of these, but it's going to be mighty, mighty close. So put a little pressure on it, kind of bump it a little bit, and then we can back away, remove the live center, and I'm going to put a Jacob's chuck in here, and we're going to drill a hole. Now, I don't want to drill that hole through and through. I'm going to use a 3/8 drill bit since I have a 3/8 tenon on my project over there. Yeah. Always go the wrong way twice. That should line me up and be more or less close to the center line. Turn the project back on, get it about 800 to 1100 RPM. You could take, sorry about that, I wasn't prepared. But you take a little bit of masking tape, and we're going to carefully measure up approximately 5/8 of an inch on that drill bit. and put us a piece of tape on there. And that's how deep we're going to drill it, okay? So when you're drilling on a lathe, get the job done. Don't sit there and go easy, because you'll burn your bit up, all right? So just go up there, let it get started so it finds its natural center, and then just get the job done. So that should have a hole there deep enough now that we can measure a project with. I'm going to take this out so I don't wound myself. That can make you bleed pretty easily. So now we'll stop the lathe and test this thing out. Well, man, it fit. Can you believe that? I think that this has got just a little bit longer than what my hole is deep. So we'll pause it and I'll take and sand that tip off just a little bit. So I have now had to sand the end of this peg off because it was slightly longer and was going to bottom out in the hole. And that would have given me a gap here where it fits. Then where I had concaved it, there was a little bit of wood. I had to take a pocket knife and remove those little chips so that it fits in there perfect now, all right? We're going to put a little glue on there. Can you bring me a glue bottle? We're going to put a little glue up in the hole. And it's important that you don't drill too deep here, because if you drill too deep, you're going to have a big old hole on the other end of it. It's also important that you don't put too much glue up in the hole. If you put too much glue up in there, you're never going to get this pushed up in there properly. So what I'm going to do is most of the glue is going to go in, and I'm going to come outside of that, and I'm going to glue this mating surface on the outside really well so that it kind of will fill any gaps it might be. Then a little drop or two up in the inside. Close this up, give it a twist. And on the grain is running this way, and here I want it running up and down. So if we kind of match the up and down grain on the bottom, it would be better. Then it's just a matter of bringing this up. You don't even have to have a live center or anything in it. Put a good pressure on it and let it seat. You've seen it pop there just a little bit. And let it dry. Okay. So I've got the glass that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to put a mark in here, and I put another piece of tape on that drill bit so that I know how deep to drill that hole. And I've already pre-drilled that hole. I want that hole to be at least 1/8 of an inch deeper than what the stem is longer. And we can do 2 or 3 things. You can use 5-minute epoxy to put this in and glue it in. You can use 100% silicone like they would seal a window glass in a wood frame, and that's probably the best. I like the silicone the best. So I have drilled that out 3/8 of an inch, and it's about 1 1/8 inches deep. Then I've come back in here, and this glass has got a taper on it right here. So I come back in here and I went with a 1/2 inch drill bit, maybe 1/4 inch, and then I come back after that and I took a 5/8 inch drill bit and I just made it big. That way it seals up and gets around this curve a little bit better and will set on it, and it will look really nice when it fits. See what it's going to look like? So you won't see me doing the drill, but that's okay. We're going to put the live center back on there now. And I'll put a 60-degree cone on the end of my live center. Some people have separate live center with their 60-degree cones. I kind of like this one. It's kind of one live center does the whole job, and then we can bring it back up, and that's back on the same center now as what it was. When I turn the lathe on, you will see this bouncing a little bitty bit, all right? That's because when I reversed it, it didn't get perfect in alignment. So, see it moving a little bit up here? This is actually a different project of what you seen me doing a while ago. Since I'm doing a video like this, it takes about, I have to build 4 of these to get one to let you see. So I'm going to come back in here. We're going to reshape this bead ever so slightly so that it's running back on the same center. And then I can come in here and I can take this down, and I cut a nice little ogee on the base of this. I knew I was going to have to do a little bit more. So that's about all I'm going to do to this right now. Holding with my plan of always turning turning out here closer to the line center and working back, we'll begin to shape this stem part of the wine glass. In a quick reference there, I had about a 1/2 inch long, 5/8 inch diameter bead here and one here. And then whatever's left in the middle of that, I just make it straight, all right? So we're going to proceed to do that. I can use the roughing gouge and do a peeling cut. That's probably what I will do to start out with. A peeling cut, I turn that roughing gouge up on its edge. There's a couple of flat spots on this big roughing gouge, about a 1/2 inch long on each one. That's straight. It's not a circle. It's straight on the end. All right. So I can turn it up like this. You can see my ghost down in there. When I get down to that ghost, it should be about round. You can see the shaft down inside. And I want to have at least, I'd say no less than a 1/16 of an inch of wood on the outside of that hole. If you get too small with this, then you have a weakness problem. So my bowl gouge now, and I'm going to stop the lathe and readjust my tool list. And I'm going to proceed to cut this section out here. Since I have this heart, if I put too much pressure on the end pressure here, I can literally break that in two right here where the heart comes back up in here. That hole goes back in here so far that I'm going to turn it around and then come back out. So proceed to turn here a little bit. I'm just working just on the top of that. Cutting the corners off. You can see it bouncing a little bit. That's because it's not exactly on the same center that I started out with. Plus I had left about 1/8 of an inch distance here before I get to the heart on this one, because I knew I was going to be taking it off and putting it back on several times. So this one I'm just going to go ahead now and turn it back around and hopefully screw up that bounce that's in there. And at the same time, it'll narrow that shoulders of that heart down to where it's almost like a razor blade thin in that area right here. All right? So I could go just, one more touch and get everything better. Then we're going to go back with a detail gouge and proceed to turn this corner over on the top of that heart. and shape and totally shape the top of that heart. And it don't hurt to stop it and check it occasionally. And I'm still too big here on this shaft, but I'm down almost as close as I want to go right in here, all right? So you can see that I've got a nice little heart shape going on, and I've cut that where I'm just touching the inside edge of that heart. I could come back just a little bit more and maybe make one more pass there and clean that all up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to proceed to cut this diameter here down to where it's about, I think I need to measure that and see, but I think that's about, looks like 7/8 of an inch is what I originally had it. So I'm going to cut that down to about a 7/8. Do I have a 7/8 wrench over there? That wrench right there, is it 7/8? I don't have one. What size is that?
17 mil.
Yeah, that's close enough. So I've got my calipers, and I've set it to where it's 7/8 of an inch between. Might be slightly over 7/8 of an inch. And it's got an adjusting screw. If you'll hold it like that and hold that away from you, that way if it has something happen, it won't come up and hit you in the jugular or something, all right? Using a diamond-shaped parting tool, the one that's got the edges on it, and it will allow me to go straight in to the wood. So I'm going to get a start, and then I'm going to set my calipers in here. And then that way, now it's just a matter of cleaning it up straight. I've sized it 2 or 3 different places. Go back and cut everything off. It doesn't look like the neck I want it to do. Ooh, I just about messed up there. See how much damage I done. Done enough. I can fix it. You can fix about anything, right? So now then we're going to cut this about a 1/2 inch there, about a 1/2 inch there, and we'll take the center of this dowel, cutting that down now where it's in the neighborhood of a 1/2 inch, 5/8 inch diameter. And it should be about the same as that one, so we can actually measure that. Put my calipers in there a while ago. So we will get a good measurement on this inside diameter, 5/8, 650 thousandths, a little bit bigger than 5/8. So I can stop. If I had a 5/8 wrench, I could size it with a 5/8 wrench, but I don't have one set up. That's just a little bit big. So I'm going to come back in here now and clean it up a little bit better. That's probably good enough for the girls I go with. Cut that bead here. This bead here has got a little bit longer taper down on the bottom of that, so that's what I'm going to build right now. Try to make it look kind of like that. and the top of my bead is out here away from there. Then I'm going to turn a bead here. This bead kind of got a little ogee right in there. You kind of see that little ogee on there. So we're going to turn it down, turn the inside first. And I'll turn a little slight ogee here. So it sits nice on the glass. And I want that to be fairly thin where the glass contacts it. Create a little bit more of a detail here. And that's not exactly straight. I can see that it's bigger here. That looks pretty close. This visual is really all you got to do here, just have it visually correct. Then we're going to take our little spiraling tool. We'll turn our RPM back down below 600 and above 400 if you keep them, if that speed's actually what you want to know about. And this one here, I'm going to contact that wheel and we're going to bury it the same way we did a while ago on the base of that. So I'm going to contact it in the middle, slightly above center, and get it to turning. We'll bury all the teeth. Then slowly, 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 I'm going to move that out to the edge, and I'm going to come all the way back. I'm keeping a constant pressure on it and doing my best to keep that handle from jumping up and down. If that handle jumps up and down, you'll destroy your spiral. All right? So that should have cut a decent little spiral around it. Then we'll sand that lightly. Get the fuzz off of it, because when I cut that wood, it kind of raises it up a little bit. Then any final detail work we need to do to the beads, we'll do it now. That looks pretty good. Do a light sanding. Then we're going to burn it a little bit, a couple of places. Burning, you want your speed back up. Excuse me, you want your speed back up. And we're using friction heat. If you have a slow RPM, you don't get it burned good. We'll put a burn line here and one here. And that should create or finish the top of that project about to its finished diameter. And you can compare it again. I know it doesn't have color on it, but it's pretty close, isn't it? Doesn't look too bad. It'd be a his and hers at a wedding, so they should be very similar. Now then, we're going to clean up my boo-boo here just a little bit, and we'll start to work on the bottom of that heart. Get my tool resting a little bit closer. Since I made that boo-boo, this heart's not going to be exactly like the other one, but it'll be close enough. People will be able to say, yeah, it's a heart. So on this prototype, down here you can see how I've got a nice flat and then a little ogee, and it actually flattens out back up in there. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to create that area there. Then we'll work on the rest of this section in the center. look at it visually and see if that area right there looks about right. And I think it does. I'm a little straighter down right here. I've got too much of wood still left right in there. That's probably good enough. Now then I'm going to work back up here in the middle of my heart. I'm going to proceed to take some wood off. Stop it and look at it. Close. Looking about right. I'm going to clean up the rest of my boo-boo here and thin this out in this edge of the heart right in there. One of the rules that I was told is you should always turn downhill, like I'm doing right here. And we'll turn around and turn downhill this way. I'm critical not to get in any hurry, which goes against my nature. I like to just get it done. But if you get too fast, you'll mess up, kind of like I did a while ago. So I like everything here, but you can see this is too fat, right? The thickness right here. So if I take a little bit more of that down, it will thin that heart out just a little bit. And I'm kind of floating the bevel. I'm not pushing hard and not rubbing it hard. I'm just kind of letting it float on the wood. I am touching it. You can hear it go thump, 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 thump. But I think I'm going to like this. That looks pretty good. Okay, not bad. So now then we're going to work on this last little spool, or whatever you want to call this thing here. I got 2 beads and a cove, all right? So we're going to create 2 beads with a cove in between them. Clean up my roughness of the wood there before I start. Get a nice cylinder shape. All right, pretty close. So I'm going to put half a bead here. Another half bead right here. Then a half bead up here. And the cove in between. Not too bad. I think this one is a little bit thinner right here than this one. So I need to thin that down just a little bit more, and then we'll make this slightly smaller because it's a little big. Make it a little smaller. Get it with a little bit of sandpaper, and I think we're going to be awfully close to being done. So I'm going to stretch that across here, higher on my left hand than I am on my right, because that wood's coming over at the top at me. I want to be able to get this part and smooth it up a little bit. I think I'm going to like that. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to burn it, and then we will remove it off the lathe and put a finish on it. Okay, so I've set the glass portion of this back down in there, and they should be really close to the same size. We're going to glue these in with, like I said, either a 5-minute epoxy or a silicone, and either one of them will take a little glue time to dry. So hand me that board right there. I taught this class one time down at Moore Norman Technology Center, and one of the guys built 2 of these, and one of them kind of leaned in one way and the other one leaned out the other way, and he called them I lean and you lean. So if you want to, you can set them side by side, put your glue on there, and take a longer board and set it on here and flatten both of them out together, and then they should be coming pretty darn close to the same. All right. So that said, all we like here is to add a little bit of color to here, and I've just got some dye, like I said, or actually a turquoise colored stain, and stain this really well. Let it dry for an hour or so. Let all the moisture get out of it, and then I've got about maybe 3 coats of a spray polyurethane on here. And I like to use the glossy because it ought to be nearly as shiny as what the glass is above it. And it for sure ought to be shinier than the table setting that they're going to set the wedding cake on. And they'll put them here like so and probably take some pictures, you know. So that is it. Happy Valentine's Day, and that's the reason I did this, is because Valentine's Day is just a little ways away, and I would encourage you to make your Valentine a wine glass.